Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation tonight about the county's first ever Ag Economic Development Plan. We'll also be announcing our annual award winners. Before we get started, as you can probably see, this meeting is going to be recorded and will be available on our website within the next week. Please keep your video turned off and your sound muted. We'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation, and you can enter any questions, comments, feedback in the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Also, if you like, you can follow up after the meeting with any comments or feedback by emailing us at adc@chesco.org or by calling our office. See, as you can see tonight, we're going to be covering the awards, the strategic plan, taking public comments, talking about next steps, and then sending you on your way. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Chester County Commissioners who will be kicking off the meeting tonight. We have Commissioner Marian Moskowitz, Commissioner Josh Maxwell, and Commissioner Michelle Kickline. Commissioner Moskowitz, would you care to say a few words to get us started?
I would love to. Thank you so much, Anne. It's great to be with you this evening to focus on the importance of the agricultural industry in Chester County. And of course, to recognize two of Chester County's best agricultural ambassadors. Chester County has a long history of being one of the largest and most productive agricultural counties, not just in the Commonwealth, but in the nation. The history and our continued strength is driven by a set of assets that exist in only a few other places, such as excellent farm entrepreneurs, world-class soil resources, unique microclimate, supportive public sector, and direct access to the nation's largest and wealthiest consumer markets. You know, Chester County ranks second among all 67 Pennsylvania counties and 53rd in the US in the total value of agricultural products sold. Our region is the top producer for mushrooms in the United States, an industry whose existence touches nearly every aspect of our wider agricultural community and Chester County as a whole. We have farms of all sizes and all types, from crop farms spanning over 1,000 acres through lease agreements to hydroponic basil operations in a single greenhouse. Thank you for joining us this evening as we review the strategy and keep the ag industry resilient in Chester County, and as we honor two very special people. Over to you, Commissioner Maxwell.
Thank you very much, Marian. There is a deep well of agricultural expertise and farming tradition here in Chester County, but we know that farmers across all industry sectors are facing so many challenges: labor shortages, access to land, environmental fluctuations and natural disasters, and constantly changing consumer demand for goods. We know that the ongoing pandemic has only made it more difficult for businesses of any kind to succeed. Although the past couple of years has made all of us appreciate our local food system in ways we never anticipated, the idea to create this ag economic plan was originally noted several years ago during the stakeholder listening sessions for the county's comprehensive plan, Landscapes 3. During that process, we heard from the farming community that there was a real need to provide technical ordinance guidance to municipalities, connect the public to local agricultural industry, help farmers with access to land, business resources, and succession planning, and grow capacity within organizations already playing a role in supporting agricultural businesses. That is why we are so very excited to share a draft of our county's first Ag Economic Development Strategic Plan with you tonight. With that, I turn it over to my colleague, Commissioner Michelle Kickline.
Good evening. As Commissioner Maxwell said, we are pleased to offer this draft strategy for review this evening because we want agriculture in Chester County not just to survive, but to thrive. This plan has been a long time coming, and I think we can all agree, more necessary now than ever. As you'll learn tonight, the purpose of this plan is to support a successful transition to the future by encouraging our local communities and entrepreneurs to do what they do best. We believe growth in Chester County will be led by innovation and technology adaptation, closer relationships between consumers and producers, community and industry leadership, investment in modern infrastructure, and supportive public policy. I want to thank the staff of the Chester County Ag Council and its board members for bringing us all together this evening for this planning session to work collaboratively with so many partners towards a better, more resilient future for Chester County agriculture. And it is right that we also recognize the tremendous efforts of our County Agricultural Land Preservation Board and the Conservation District, as well as Penn State Extension. We are grateful that many of you have been so generous with your time and expertise as this plan begins to take shape. Thank you for working with us. We hope you continue to let us know how we can support you and our county's top industry, agriculture. As you listen to the details of this plan, get to know our talented consultants, Phil and Anna from ACDS. Please keep in mind that what we have right now is a draft plan. We want to hear from you. Your feedback is critical in making this the best plan it can be.
Thank you so much, commissioners. Let's see, I'd like to introduce our Chester County Ag Council Board Chair, Chris Alonso, to get us started in the second portion. Chris, would you care to say a few words? Let's see, Chris, I believe you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me? All right. Hi, everybody. As Chair of the Ag Council, first, I'd like to thank the commissioners for their support. Their awareness of agriculture and its importance to Chester County is terrific. We really appreciate their support. Agriculture is modern, innovative right now, but we have to adapt as conditions change in front of us. I'm a third-generation mushroom farmer. If I were to grow mushrooms today the way my grandfather did, we would not still be in business. But like all mushroom growers, I know that our industry depends on partnerships and other sectors of farming, crop farming, equine, air conditioning, trucking, and especially the research that comes out of universities to keep us in front of all the challenges that we're going to face. In fact, workforce is one of those key areas. I just returned from a trip from Europe to try to see if I can bring some new technology back here to Chester County. And that's why it's so important tonight, why we come together this evening to find some solutions to these challenges. And if we work together at this, we'll be ahead of the curve. So in that spirit, I'd like to take a moment before we get into the plan to recognize the winners of our Farmer of the Year and the Duncan Allison Distinguished Service Award for Agriculture. In our 33 years of giving out these awards, I think you'll see that these winners exhibit a level of community mindedness that future generations can really benefit from. So back to you, Ann.
Thanks, Chris. So on to my favorite part of the evening, where I get to announce our award winners. Our Farmer of the Year this year is Darryl King. He was nominated by the Ag Land Preservation Board, so it should come as no surprise that he is a true champion for ag land preservation throughout the county. I know it's made a big difference in the success of his own farm business, and he's not shy about talking to other farmers about what preservation could do for them too. He's also being celebrated for his commitment to environmentally sensitive farming practices like low and no-till agriculture and the use of cover crops. He hasn't always farmed this way. He'll be the first to tell you, but over the years, he's been able to research and experiment and try new things. And he's always willing to share that knowledge with his peers. And last but not least, I have to say what really knocked our board socks off when we got to meet Darryl was his commitment to the community. He's known throughout the county as being one of the first people to show up when you have a problem. Like, let's say your equipment breaks down in the road, your cows get out, God forbid, a tornado hits your farm. Darryl's always there. And that really means something. So for those reasons, we'd like to virtually give Darryl this Farmer of the Year award. Darryl, would you care to say a couple comments?
Yeah, I think, thank you very much, everybody. Definitely never thought to be awarded something like this. I actually never even knew it existed. But I definitely want to bring my wife Pam a lot of credit, because she works for the County Conservation District, and over the last 10 years, she's always gently nudged me and told me I need to step up my game and try to learn newer, more efficient ways that work with nature a whole lot better. And, I kind of take it with a grain of salt a little bit, but I have to stay true to the mantra that there's always something to learn. And it really is in my best interest to try everything, give everything a whirl on my own farm. And we're blessed to be a farm in Chester County. We're surrounded by a bunch of extended family members and longtime families that are farming next door to us. So we have an awesome network of great people. And it's really, really great to see all of us rally to support somebody when they're having a bad time with something. And I wouldn't want to farm anywhere else. Let's put it that way. I think we're so blessed to be where we are. That's for sure.
Thanks so much, Darryl. And you get extra points for giving your wife credit. That's always a good move. Okay, and moving along to our Distinguished Service Award, sort of in that same vein of community mindedness and spirit, I'd like to introduce everyone to Betsy MacCauley. If you've had anything to do with Chester County 4-H, especially their livestock programs, she is certainly no stranger to you. She's a celebrated and very busy farmer, so it means even more that she takes the time to put the next generation of farming first when it comes to how she spends her time. Her over 30 years of volunteerism with Chester County 4-H has meant leading livestock competitions and participating in the judging. She was even able to put on the Chester County, I believe it's called the Youth Livestock Show last year in the middle of an active hurricane where they lost power for 2 days at the Romano Center. I think that's worthy of an award, if nothing else. And she's also mentored countless youth, hundreds, if not thousands, in her time here in Chester County and through 4-H. Betsy, thank you so much for everything you've done and continue to do. We're very lucky to have you. Would you care to say a few words?
Yes, certainly. I want to thank everyone. I, like Darryl, was taken completely by surprise with this award, but it's truly an honor and a privilege to be receiving the Duncan Allison Service Award. I served with Duncan on the Extension Board for several years, so I'm fully aware of how dedicated he is or was to promoting and supporting agriculture in Chester County. So to be put in that same category is truly an honor. As Ann mentioned, I've been a 4-H leader for over 30 years in Chester County. But like all of you, I've never been challenged more by the surprises and hurdles we encountered in 2020. I had to learn all about Zoom meetings, how to make them engaging to the kids, and encountered the same challenges of distance learning. The final straw, though, last year was when Penn State was not going to support an in-person show for the 4-H members. And knowing how these kids put their hearts and souls into purchasing, feeding, and training their project animals, we decided, a group of parents and volunteers organized and ran the show and got it done in less than a month. So I don't know if I was fully the one who did it, but I think I was probably one of the loudest voices pushing the plan forward anyway. So, but my hopes out of all of this was that the kids involved have become inspired to persevere through any challenge, rain, sleet, or snow, and that they too would become volunteers in the future with a passion to be part of something bigger. So I'd like to accept this award on behalf of all the volunteers who've given unselfishly to promote and encourage youth in agriculture. And to everyone else, again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Betsy. And sometimes I think we can all agree it takes a loud voice to get things done. So we appreciate everything that you continue to do. And of course, we appreciate you too, Darryl. Commissioners, do you have any comments that you'd like to add?
I just want to congratulate both Darryl and Betsy for your passion, your drive, and for being in Chester County, because this would never be the county that it is without people like you every day working so hard to make it great. So thank you.
I'll just quickly add, I think these are the two coolest recognitions we probably have in Chester County. I mean, Farmer of the Year, you should get like, special treatment at parades and, people should clap where you can walk down the street. I think it's really cool that we're celebrating both of you and celebrating what you've done in the industries you're in, and hope you know that our entire board's here to support your efforts and your work and with your farm and 4-H, and of course the wonderful conservation district, which I'm on the board of. So rock on, and let us know how we can help. It's great to be with you both.
There we go. Thank you so much, commissioners. I'd also like to add that Senator Comita's office will also be sending citations to our winners, so that's also a nice treat. And let's see, and now on to our ag plan. I'd like to introduce everyone to Phil and Anna from ACDS. They're our wonderful consultants that have been working hard, talking to farmers all over the county, working with our partner organizations to help put this plan together. And I know I'm excited to see what they have to share with you all tonight. So let's take a listen. Thanks so much, Phil and Anna. It's over to you.
Very good. Well, we're going to put a presentation up on the screen quickly here. We're going to try to run through an awful lot of information in a pretty short period of time. So I'm sure it's going to feel like drinking through a fire hose a bit. We would encourage you all as we're going through the presentation, if you have any questions, use the chat function, and we'll try to track the questions along with the slides, and we'll get to answers as we go. The plan process has been underway for quite a few months, and as I was looking through the list of names for folks who signed up to be with us tonight, I noticed a lot of you are folks that we've talked to, and there are quite a few new names I don't recognize. So we're glad to have you aboard. The plan, as Chris Alonso alluded to, and I think Betsy in your remarks certainly pointed out the role of the future leaders that we are trying to support and get in place, because agriculture in Chester County, as we learned very quickly, is no matter what industry that you're in, is agriculture. It's about innovation. It's about keeping up. It's about maintaining leadership. And despite a number of challenges that we face in achieving our goals moving in the future, we're quite confident that the leadership coming up, leadership like Darryl, is in a good position to take us forward the next steps. That'll keep us in that leadership position. So let's just talk quickly about what we're doing and where we are in the process. So the project, I think the name gives it all away, is an economic development. Somehow I think I've messed up.
I got it.
All right. It's an economic development strategy specific to the industry of agriculture. And when we talk about agriculture, we talk about not only the production side of agriculture, but everything that's affiliated with it. So we're looking at all of the industries that are affected by agriculture, that agriculture has an influence on, from food at the retail level back to the environmental relationships between production, agriculture, and for instance, our watersheds and our soil and our air quality. So we try to take a pretty comprehensive look at what drives agriculture, understanding that we have to have farmers to have farms, and that means we have to have profitability in agriculture. So our first cut at this plan was to look at the economic data, understand the economic data, look at where the trends are taking us in the future, and then have that data inform a set of questions and additional analysis that would prepare us to get out and meet with farmers. So as those of you who went through that process with us know, our intention was, in talking to the 54 people we talked to, in what amounted to, for some of you, quite long multi-hour interviews, was to try to understand the information that we were looking at, and to use that to formulate a strategy for moving forward, which is where we are today. We've started to put that strategy together, looking forward the next 5 or 10 years, and we'll present as much of that as we can get through in detail tonight. The information that you're going to see here on these slides, as well as some support data, will be available on the Chesco Ag website. And as more information comes out, we will keep that updated, because I think, as the commissioners alluded to, Ann said it as well, we don't want this plan to be a surprise to people. We want this to be something that's been part of a discussion that people feel like they've been able to engage in. So after tonight, we will hold a few more listening sessions with the full plan in front of us, and we'll use those sessions to take the draft and create a final strategic plan sometime in the next few weeks, or closer to the holidays, perhaps. So we're really hoping that the engagement that we've gotten so far, which has been fantastic, just continues on. And those of you who are new to the process will feel like you can reach out to us and be part of it. And at the end of this presentation, we will include our contact information so that you can get a hold of us. Anna, do you mind progressing to the next slide? See if I can make it. All right, so I just want to highlight a few issues as we get going, because these are things I'd just like people to kind of keep in their minds. One of the things that we want to focus on right out of the box when we're putting a strategy like this together, the common issues that come up again and again and again in conversations. And there were a handful in Chester County that were almost ubiquitous. It's just about every interview we had, it involved some element of these little issues you see in these boxes on this slide. And some of them, I would say, are really critical to the future. And not to oversell the point, and Chris brought it up, workforce availability was something that every single business that we talked to felt was limiting their ability to grow and change over time. Changes to the logistics system. I mean, none of these are issues we don't hear every day in the news. They've been affecting agriculture for quite a long time and are just getting worse. All of this is creating a situation where the cost of doing business is going up rather rapidly. We were seeing the inflationary pressures earlier in agriculture than we were in other industries, which is fairly common. And we combine that with issues related to market access and infrastructure, and you start to see a picture of not only where we have our most significant challenges, but when we get to issues like collaborative market development and adoption of innovation and new process technologies, we start to see the solutions. And we see a place where the county really is taking a leadership in thinking at the individual farm level as well as at the industry level. So there's some really interesting responses beginning to form to some of these challenges, and we want this plan to pick up on those and move those forward as quickly as possible. So just to put some of the opportunities out there in front of you all, I'm sure there'll be questions about this as we go down the line. And we see many linkages between agriculture and the consuming economy, relationships to the environment, relationships to new products, new agriculture systems, relationship to energy. We see agriculture innovating in last mile food delivery and in new ways that we didn't expect. These are all sort of emergent market opportunities that we feel we need to capture and help develop. And you'll see some of these through thematically introduced through the recommendations. This may be the last time in this presentation you see some of these this specifically, which is why I wanted to just highlight them. The rest of it's going to be relatively high level, but I would encourage you to ask very specific questions when we get to the Q&A session. Anna, you mind hitting the next one? All right, so just looking at some of the data issues we face, I want to make sure we have some common ground for conversation. We will not be having a 40-minute data presentation here. And this is probably no surprise to anyone. There's been significant pressure on farmland. Urban areas are expanding. Farmland loss is an issue that was on everybody's mind. Conservation of farmland, conservation of environmental land, certainly something of concern to everybody. And we see, unfortunately, a larger decrease in cropland than in other types of land, which of course affects the structure of agriculture, and is something that we need to pay attention to in the future. This is having the effect of making it very costly to compete for land if you're in any type of crop-based, land-based agricultural production system, and it's something that's causing some I would say, shifting in the type of agriculture that's being done, which you can see from car window when you drive around. Despite the loss in land, we're seeing the size of farms staying the same, which is good, because it tells us that the structure of agriculture and the type of farm that we have in the community is really quite stable. Now, sales. This is something we don't see in many counties, frankly. It's a continued trend of increasing sales, even though the real value of those sales is declining. The fact that we have seen relatively strong growth trajectory over the last basically 20 years is really quite encouraging. The dispersion of that across varied farm sizes is also quite encouraging, and perhaps more so when we see that 50% of the farms in the county would be classified as very small farm operations. So we've got a really unique mix of large and small farms that tend to be very focused on revenue generation, and I would say increasingly perhaps struggling with generating profit on the farm, though. That is a struggle for more than 50% of the farms in the county at this point. So no surprise here. Our big industries are dairy and mushroom, poultry, the field crops that support these industries, all things you see from the car window as you drive around the county. The nice thing about the list you see here is most of the industries are in some level of growth. That doesn't count for all. They rank quite high in state rankings, and for some of these industries, quite high in national rankings. So we have a lot of leadership capability in the industry, and really quite diverse. There's a lot of strength in the diversity. Now, some of you on tonight will notice that the equine industry is not listed here, and I want to call that out because we recognize that the equestrian community is significant, very, very significant player in agriculture. The data to support the industry, the size of the industry, the type of operators in the industry and what their revenue trends are just does not exist. However, we talked to quite a few people in the industry. We've, I think, got a pretty good feel for its stability and the direction it's heading in, and would indicate that it should be right up top there with the mushroom industry in terms of its impact on the ag economy. So not unlike much of the United States, the average age of our farmer is skewed toward an older demographic. Like the rest of the United States and the rest of the state, we see, fewer young people coming into the industry than we'd like to see. I think, Betsy, that's hopefully something that 4-H helps us change over time. But this is a crisis that the nation is facing in terms of entrepreneurship. We don't see new people entering agriculture and or the industries around it, whether that's trucking or service and supply or food manufacturing. Now, the positive here is that farmers in Chester County are below the national average. So even though we have an aging demographic, we're a younger demographic than the nation. So it's a place where younger farmers can start and sustain, which is a really healthy indicator. All right, we probably don't have to spend long here, except to say that we are largely an experienced group of farmers. Nearly a quarter, though, have some level of newness to the industry, right? They don't come from a farming background. They don't have a lot of farming experience. They fit USDA's definition for a beginning farmer. So that once again is another indicator that we are bringing sort of fresh blood in and allowing some growth. Now, getting back to cost of doing business and what challenges there are in identifying a piece of land and getting on a piece of land are all things that are going to create barriers moving forward, and we'll talk a little bit about later on the solution side of this. You mind hitting the next one? All right, so I think we've already covered this. We would love to see this chart on the left-hand side look a lot different. Nearly 60% of the farms in the county carry an operating loss. And these tend to fall on the smaller side of the farm operators. And we understand there's a lot of reasoning that goes in behind that. And there's a lot to discuss when we get into the findings and the recommendations about how we start to look at addressing this particular issue. Next. All right, labor. I think we'll go through these stats pretty quickly. Labor is the largest share of expenses for farmers in the county. Labor rates have been increasing at a relatively consistent rate for a very long time. Farming relies heavily on unpaid labor, which is everything from family members to interns, more than most other industries. And we've got a labor condition that really doesn't lend itself to growth in industries that require boots on the ground to move product. You can flip through, Anna, to the next slide. We do see here that agriculture, and this is often a misconception. You don't have to study this slide very long. I'll tell you what it says, and what it says is that there are more than a few job classes in agriculture that pay better than the per capita income in the county. So there's this misconception often that agriculture is a poor paying industry. And in fact, that's often not the case. Often agriculture actually pays fairly good wages and very competitive wages. Next slide. But what we have is a skills gap. Particularly, I think back to something Chris said at the beginning and kicking this off, automation and new process controls and the adoption of new technology is where agriculture is going to have to go to succeed in an environment where labor is becoming critically short. And with that comes a skills gap. So we when we look to the future of agriculture, really need to focus on where these skill gaps exist and how we start to identify and cure those skill gaps long term. All right, so I'm going to take a break from the data and really just start to address where we fall with the creation of our recommendations and action items moving forward. So the actions or the strategies are divided into the areas, the 7 areas you see here. We start out looking at improving agricultural market access. Then we move on in the recommendations to labor and workforce recommendations so we can start to address what is probably the biggest current issue we face. For those young farmers and existing farmers who are trying to expand or adapt to new market opportunities, dealing with issues about land access and land quality, then our ability moving on to land use and zoning, ability to accommodate modern agriculture. As we talk about the adoption of automation and new technologies, we sometimes push the very bounds of the definition of agriculture, and we'll want to look at really how we adapt our current land use policies to what the future of agriculture looks like, and then move on to the business development and financing needs, and ultimately education and public outreach needs for the industry. So we'll take a quick walk through what's a very unattractive matrix here to try to give you an idea of where this this plan is headed. And as we noted at the beginning, we'll take questions on all of this as soon as I run through this matrix. So I'll actually try to be fairly quick because I already see some questions starting to come in. I would say first and foremost here on agricultural marketing, the county has fantastic leadership in agriculture, and there's no reason why we don't follow the direction of that leadership. And just continue to support the innovation that's represented in it. So the Ag Council's here now. And the members of the Ag Council, as we've discovered, are quite creative and energetic. And through them and through other organizations, we see emerging trends that quite frankly are groundbreaking. We start here with supporting the Farm of the Future at New Bolton. It is, it's a new way of looking at animal agriculture in the region that is supportive of the type, size, and style of farm that we have. Developing new industry sectors, whether that's in biomass or industrial hemp, supporting our poultry and livestock operators, which I would say was just a consistent theme of being able to support small scale processing, marketing and distribution related to that industry, product development, and then integrating all of this with our urban counterparts, both in agriculture and the consumer market side of things. So our first leadership recommendation gives way to our second, which is increasing our engagement with the consumer. Repeatedly, we were presented with the opportunities, particularly in nearby urban areas. I'll just quickly pick one: New York and Philadelphia, where large concentrated populations that largely feel like they've been left out of the food product development stream, Hispanic market being one in particular, where they're looking for certain types of dairy and meat and fruits and vegetables that they can't get or don't get with any regularity and quality. These markets exist. They're markets we can access, markets we need to understand better. So we're creating a more formalized process in here to engage those consumers as well as others that want to engage their palate and their stomach with agriculture in a different way. I think our lessons learned during COVID, and certainly right now with our supply chain seemingly falling apart, lead us to our third marketing recommendation, which is enhancing our infrastructure. Our experience has been that our consumer base really liked having producers close by and having markets close by that they could access during COVID. Resilience is certainly something people care about. And the use of last mile delivery, ability for people to get their food delivered to the home, is something that seems to be a trend that's going to stick post-COVID, and something that we feel like agriculture needs to be a lot more engaged in. So the recommendations deal specifically with how we build out that type of infrastructure and help farmers monetize that. Improving people's understanding, moving on to the next recommendation, of what's available locally, how to access local foods, making it easier for people through corporate health programs to be able to build out their pantries with local product, for instance, beginning to integrate agriculture into the latest and greatest values-based development system in corporate America, ESG. For those of you who haven't heard about it, that's ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. Increasingly, farms are going to be called on to prove that what they do is environmentally sustainable, it contributes to good social outcomes, and that we operate in a transparent way. If we can't do that, we're going to be left out of certain supply chains. So there's a set of recommendations built around building on those sort of newly established building blocks. And then doing more to integrate tourism activities, sort of capturing the traffic that comes out of Philadelphia, having them spend more dollars on the farm, increasing the integration between operations was something that a lot of folks who currently have either retail activity or agritourism activity were interested in doing. So it's keeping that local tourist dollar in hand. And you want to hit the next slide. So I won't read through these quite like I did the last, but our workforce and labor recommendations really are all embedded in these first two recommendation areas. And this is about modernizing the skills in the workforce and making people aware that agriculture is not only a good place to work, but the pay can be good and the jobs are modern, right? They use modern technology and are really kind of on the cutting edge of things, and not to, no pun intended here, that then transitions into making sure that we have all of those old world skills that we need, things like meat cutting and poultry processing, the ability to adapt to modern food safety standards are all part of making sure that we've got the basic skills we need in the workforce to keep it alive and renewed. And then those skills, the same set of skills transfer needs to happen with owner operators. Part of the training envisioned here is about improving profitability. And part of this is about helping people learn where they can improve their adoption of new technology, new production techniques, and on a one-on-one basis, really learn how to make their farm more efficient, more productive, and help it meet their goals in a more effective way. So we're in that vein proposing a very, very specific set of changes. Now that's fine, Anna. To the way consulting, in essence, between farmers and professionals in various fields work. And then the rest of these are really about mobility and labor housing and other things that contribute to both the cost and the access to labor that so many farms are facing in terms of shortages. We can move on. All right, so I know I saw a point come through about affordability and access for beginning farmers, finding ways to get farms, make farms available, maybe in new and creative ways, through both the use of conservation easements, with options to purchase at agriculture value, establishing a more formal mentor-protege relationship between farmers who may be exiting and farmers who want to enter agriculture, where we can do skills development and land transfer, and then doing a better job of helping intake those people who think they want to be in agriculture, who come from outside of agriculture, figure out if one, it's the right industry for them, and two, really how they fit in and where they need to get training. So, this first recommendation is really about taking a very proactive role in helping to nurture and grow the new entrance into agriculture, and support ag value transfers of currently conserved land. We didn't talk about this obviously in the data section, but we were absolutely astounded at the difference in ag value between, say, Cecil County, Maryland and Chester County, Pennsylvania. Really critically important. And then helping people with the idea that producing value off of your land isn't necessarily a bad thing, and understanding how we can do that within a model that supports conservation goals is something else that we want to really embed in the plan and work through in the the recommendations. Now, kind of moving down the recommendations, getting into C3 here. The conversations we were able to have with municipal officials led us to the conclusion that the same type of conversations and training, education would benefit municipal officials as they think about what agriculture is and how they plan for agriculture in the future. This is particularly true given the changes we're seeing in agriculture over time, and making sure that the right tools are in place to help keep the relationship between those people who live in a working relationship with the land and the communities that sustain them. And I would leave this slide here talking just quickly about what we're calling positive environmental externalities. It's just a fancy way of us saying most of the farmers, if not all the farmers we talked to, felt like the adoption of best practices for reducing their footprint in the environment were really having positive results on both watersheds and air quality and soil conservation, and in some cases carbon sequestration. So what we are proposing in the plan is that we take the next step to actually develop a system that tracks those advancements live and reports it in a dashboard format, so people who want to know what the impact of agriculture is on the environment and on the economy can really track that in real time. And you want to move to so moving on to the zoning and land use side, it seemed like every farmer that we talked to was having some issue either with neighbor relations, or there was maybe a conflict that they had encountered in a township that related to a definitional concern with agriculture. So we felt like that, combined with the rapid pace, or the apparent rapid pace, of conversion of ag land, was something that we really wanted to address in the plan to make sure that land stayed available, that we were encouraging, where it makes sense, high density development to keep pressure off of ag land, so that our best and most productive soils could stay in agriculture, continue to be productive. Looking at how zoning could be developed in the future so that there was better relationships between non-agricultural users and agricultural users, looking specifically at improving the relationship between residences and farms. The rate of conflict seemed to be on the rise, and something people were really quite concerned about. And then these recommendations move into very specific issues about how we look at and plan our infrastructure, broadband, roads, water, sewer, and how we do that across jurisdictions, not just within municipalities, to make sure that we've got not only better infrastructure, but safer infrastructure over time. And that our roads and our ditches are keeping up with the additional rains that we're seeing here as climate change seems to be impacting us in our region, particularly with larger volume rainstorms. And finally here, I would point out that managed forest was something that was almost as commonly brought up as workforce as an issue for us to address. And increasing the amount of, or the number of acres forests under forest management plans, and incorporating forestry within agriculture as a practice is something that we felt was really important, so that the conversation about forestry and timber activities wasn't just a conversation about development, because it seemed to be a lot of confusion in some conversations we had about what was a terminal harvest of a forest for a development conversion versus a forest harvest that may be ongoing for management of a lanternfly population or some invasive species. So using more of a science-based approach to have those discussions is something that that we really wanted to make sure is kind of front and center, with the understanding that most farms have have forest plots on them, and they rely on those forest plots for income. They're just a longer rotation crop. You want to hop on the next one? So supporting the individual entrepreneurs is really what this set of recommendations is about on this slide. You know, our focus on making sure that individual entrepreneurs have the tools that they need to be successful is something that we as a county keep, you know, very much front and center. Our recommendation starts with taking a lot of the information that's already embedded in the county GIS system and simply making it available in a different way to agribusinesses that are expanding or changing, or in the case of young and beginning farmers, that the information is available in a way that they can assimilate it and make good, sound business decisions. So why is this in here? Some of you may be scratching your heads. We heard a number of stories from startup farmers that they wish they had known something. They would have made it maybe about how their operation worked. They would have made a different decision in how they developed a piece of property or their selection of a piece of property. And given the cost of land, whether you're leasing or buying, it's really critical that those mistakes be reduced to the extent possible. And then bundling those with services that are really designed to assist individual businesses in the situation that they're in, and not be more generic like a lot of small business development services are. And then supporting the development of the supply chain as a whole, not just focusing on the production sector, but making sure that the entire supply chain is healthy, from the research and development side of things to processing. This is, you know, an issue I know will probably come up in conversation here, but the inability to get a product packed, whether that's a livestock product or a fruit and vegetable product, have it changed in form and packaged in a way that makes it merchantable, is really in short supply, and it's getting worse. And in fact, Pennsylvania just in the last 2 weeks has lost yet another meat packer. So what was a really tough situation has just gotten tougher in the last few weeks. The relationship between the food system infrastructure and the consumer is one that can't be taken lightly. Kind of going back to the notion that we need relationships with new groups of consumers. Our existing consumers have an expectation that when they buy a product, it's going to be of a reliable quality. And that is some of the feedback we got post-COVID, was that as people went out into the community and looked for replacements for the grocery store when the grocery store missed things, that they didn't have the experience that they got the same level of consistency time and time again, and that called into question whether local could really fill the void for them over time. And we want to make sure that quality gap is bridged, not just the quantity gap. And finally, here we want to make sure that we're supporting through funding and incentives the changes on farms that are going to be difficult to finance. And what I mean by that, just as an example, is as we see farmers having a harder and harder time finding tractor operators, we're likely to go to automated tractors and see more of those on the ground. It's difficult to finance those right now in the United States. So having the ability to help finance innovation on the farm, I think, is going to be critical moving forward. And then helping the municipalities deal with agricultural business retention. Who do you support coming in? What type of agriculture do you want? How do you get them? What's appropriate in your community? And we heard those questions as well, and we feel like that's something that needs to get supported through this particular set of recommendations. Anyone ahead? All right, so this is our kind of the end of our discussion about recommendations. And I apologize for speeding up. I was watching the questions come in fast and furious, and I figure
some are comments, and there's a couple of questions, so you can finish and we'll go.
Okay, I want to have time to get to questions. yeah, there's a big gap between what the public thinks about agriculture and what they think they understand about agriculture and what agriculture really is and what it does. And we really do feel like there's some low-hanging fruit here that needs to be addressed, right? People, when they move into an agricultural community, really need to understand what they're moving into. And when they understand that, it'll make them better consumers as well. So just reducing the pressure for starters here on farmers and the conflicts that they have to deal with is, that would be a big step forward. Then having people truly be literate in agriculture would be our next goal with that very first recommendation. And I think we have the same goal with our public officials, is just making sure that we've got really a good solid understanding of what working landscapes do, how they function, what impact they have on our economy, and what it takes to support them. These are all things that I think have very positive outcomes when we do a good job collectively of addressing agriculture as both an economic and an environmental use, because that is what a working landscape is, and not focus really exclusively on one element or the other, because then we really have a balance issue that throws off our progress over time. So there's a set of recommendations and actions that deal with really taking some progressive steps to bring those who don't normally deal with agriculture on a day-to-day basis in closer contact and a more positive contact with agriculture. So that should have been about a 3-hour conversation in 30 minutes.
I'm gonna also.
So we'll leave this slide up while we're going through our Q&A. I did want to really encourage anyone who wants to talk to us one-on-one or has an issue that we can't cover tonight because we don't have the time, or you're wondering if we actually understood something that we said tonight in a reasonable way. We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out. Email is always the best way to get us and schedule with us. So we would encourage you to take that approach whenever possible.
And use the second 2 emails, because the first one.
Anna's really good about getting questions to me.
The first question that came in while you were still going over the initial set of recommendations is from Noreen. She says, industrial hemp is a commodity, as we know. She is concerned, given the experiences of farmers in Kentucky, is it wise in Chester County? And of course, I know that we have a couple people on the call that probably could answer that, but I think we'll just take it. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, so let me just speak to the Kentucky experience really quickly. So what's happened in Kentucky, and they've pushed this really hard as a commodity that works for small farmers, is the genetic research wasn't quite there, and the productivity on the farms was really terrible. It was a lot lower than expected. And a lot of the initial research was done for one particular market outcome. What we think is really going to be more effective over time is when we look at the plant as providing 2 or 3 income streams, which is really what it does, and then trying to maximize the value of those streams, whether they are in a woven textile, a non-woven textile, an energy product, a plastic replacement, whether they're long strand lignin fibers that are going into nanoscale manufacturing and so forth and so on. There's a lot of work being done. There's research that's producing, a glass replacement out of hemp. So we think staying ahead of those emerging trends is really where an area like Chester County is going to thrive. It's not going to thrive producing a flooring alternative out of hemp. So this is an area that requires really good attention to the emerging science on the production side, as well as the product development side for it to be, I think, really effective. And over time, as carbon markets develop, some of these products will offer additional income streams, maybe a fourth income stream from certifiable sequestration. So that's maybe a shorter answer than you wanted, or a longer answer than you cared to listen to, but there's a lot packed in it.
Okay, the next question is, how will the plan evaluate the installation of solar on farmland to produce known value of revenue for 20 years? I think that, I'm sorry if I didn't get that right, Mark.
I would say what we're looking at providing are the tools for evaluating the financial and environmental impacts of developments that are either agricultural and non-agricultural on farms, so that the operator, the owner, the community have a means to truly evaluate life cycle cost. Because I think in developments like solar, longer term developments, the life cycle cost is really the important cost to look at. So the plan's really focused on developing the tools for better decision making there. We don't single out any particular industry or sort of value added segment to focus that on, as much as just creating the toolbox necessary to facilitate the discussion and ultimately the decision making.
Next question is, wetlands mitigation is already law, which we know. Can we consider a farmland mitigation program?
Yeah, we've seen farmland mitigation programs happening in lots of places. It usually is defined as a soil protection mitigation program. So we see this often with development of solar farms, wind farms, landfills, things that take up large allocations of often prime and productive soils, the soils that drain the best. We're seeing increasing use of those. That is something that's in the toolkit we're recommending, is taking a really specific look at what the critical assets are you want to protect. Farmland, obviously one of those. Quality farmland, certainly something we want to protect. And then build a system that a municipality can adopt to look project by project at things as they come in, and help make determinations about when we should instigate something like a soil mitigation program.
And then we have a comment, well, it's a question, is there a way to think about tackling climate change while Chester County is seeing expansion of residential and commercial infrastructure requirements?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah, I saw it. I was like, well, I'm going to go ahead and say it, but
yeah, I mean, we try to address this through some of the recommendations on zoning and land use. Really get to that, because we want to encourage transportation oriented development, higher density development. Just looking at the cost of creating and managing infrastructure, the cost of moving people, and that's both economic and environmental. Ultimately, it's all economic. And then in managing the impacts, whether that's through methods to make sure we have good soil retention, that we're protecting our water quality. I think those elements are all sort of embedded throughout a number of recommendations. So it's something that may be more woven through the document than it is explicit, though you'll see it explicit in some areas.
Last question that I see so far is, what is the potential of CSAs in preserving and expanding farming?
That's a question that is, I'm not going to say difficult to answer, because it's really more about what the operators are interested in with CSAs, I think, because they're very particular. Each one has a different objective often, and the people who subscribe to them subscribe to a mission and a vision as much as a product output. Now, having said that, there's a very specific recommendation in the report about collaborative marketing, because a number of CSAs indicated that they would do better if they could work together and share logistics, share workforce, and do different types of collaborative year-round marketing to expand not only the type of product, but the type of community they might be able to service. So that includes wholesale activities and more last mile, quasi last mile delivery. So we've actually got some recommendations that are specific for adoption by CSAs who are interested in more collaborative marketing, collaborative distribution activities. So yes, I think CSAs play a big role, particularly in the type of consumer environment that you're in. How you grow those models so that the operators don't collapse under the pressure of trying to do too much is really what we try to accomplish in recommending these new structures in the plan.
Oh wait, one more, let's see. There's a need, Chris asks, there's a need for mechanization on farms, which we've discussed. How do we go about investing in such technology? Farms don't have the reserves to trial these kinds of things, and any thoughts on grants or how to trial this automation before it's committed to?
Yes, so we have a sort of a multi-phase approach to that, Chris. The first thing is to look to attract some of the companies worldwide that are really advancing automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, a whole series of things, and look to recruit them to Chester County, right? Make sure this is a place that's good for them to locate. They can find the workforce, they can do R&D activities, that they have access to the producer community. That's one. Second, we're recommending actually that the county just go ahead and establish its leadership in this area by holding what would be what we're recommending the nation's foremost conference on automation, right? What we want to do is bring the experts here once a year, bring people from around the country here once a year to present, to talk about, and even trial new technologies. And then at the farm level, we're recommending grant and loan opportunities because I think you may have a better view on this than a lot of folks, just because of the industry. The amount of process control and change you have to do on the farm to adopt technology is often well beyond what people even conceptualize. It's not about buying a tractor that can drive itself. It's about having the systems that operate the tractor that make it successful. So we're looking at technical assistance, direct one-on-one technical assistance to help farmers who want to go down that pathway so that they can sit down before they make the first investment. And we often find that first investment, if it hasn't been well conceived, is a massive loss that turns people off of ever thinking about automation again. So we want to make sure that it's well conceived, well planned, and then that there is financial support and demonstration activities in place that help the transition be successful. And in fact, in many cases, traditional lenders don't even want to touch some of these more advanced technologies until they're proven. It's making sure that we can get those on the ground and test them out without having individual operators be at full jeopardy of losing everything in the process. So we think it's critical that it's a multifaceted approach.
We have a few more questions about CSAs, but I wanted to check with Ann first. How much time do we have?
Well, in theory, we have till 8 o'clock tonight, depending on how much time we need to cover next steps, or if this is all kind of wrapped into.
Yeah. Let's just keep doing questions. We'll take the last couple of minutes to talk about next steps.
Okay. The question is, so it comes back to the CSA. We have the recommendations that we've talked about. How do we help the CSAs pay for those recommendations and the innovations? Or is there gonna be high cost to them? Yes.
We're hoping that we can layer in a number of different user bases, if you will, to share assets and cost. We've actually been trying to conceptualize both a distribution system and warehousing system that would be shared with organizations like the food bank, CSAs, farmers co-ops, some of maybe even the larger businesses in the food space who would use it for overflow. So the idea is to share cost on the assets as much as possible. And the CSAs then, instead of having to be burdened, for instance, with a bunch of trucks and warehouse, would be more scheduling space, if you will, right? Having access to dedicated access to packing facilities and cold storage and processing, and to have shared marketing infrastructure. One of the things we haven't talked about tonight that's come up is the use of lockers to augment farmers markets and CSA distribution. That would be part of this system. So think about a refrigerated or frozen locker. Let's say you're in the beef business and you're doing meat shares, and you're delivering frozen meats. And right now you sit in a parking lot and you wait for people to pick up. The idea here is that you would use a shared distribution system, maybe go to a warehouse, drop off your orders, they're packed to go out, and then a truck is delivering them to a locker system inside and outside of the county even, that works very much like an Amazon or UPS locker, where your customers notified the minute their product's in the locker. They can go use a QR code on their phone, scan it, the locker door opens, and off they go with your product. We know that doesn't meet every CSA's commitment to seeing their customers one-on-one, but it's a way to add some efficiency to the model. So there's a lot of technicality built into the system. And I'd be happy to spend more time sort of drafting it out, and for whoever has those questions, we can put a group meeting together and we can whiteboard the system we're recommending.
Next question is for Jimmy. And so I don't know if you could spotlight Jimmy, but in collecting information and data, oh, by the way, Jimmy is another colleague of ours and he worked on the data on this project. So I just wanted to give him the opportunity to answer this question. How did you define farm, and did you separate out small vegetable farms or CSAs from cheese producers or large dairy farms or cash crop farms? They all have different profit margins and different inputs and outputs, of course. So Jimmy, I'm going to let you answer that.
Yeah, so as far as the definition of a farm, that's really largely based on the USDA definition, which I believe is minimum of $2,000 in sales in a given year. So that's the technical definition in the survey. As far as looking at different sectors, we actually have a ag economy memo where we dive into a lot of the different subsectors. And obviously, you make a really good point that every type of operation, depending on where they're targeting their market, whether you're going direct or you're more of a wholesale operation, the profit margins are different. And I think those nuances are, we try to cover those nuances through the content as well as the recommendations. And I think where necessary, we do incorporate numbers to kind of make those distinctions.
Right. So there's a lot of detail by commodity sector, by type of farm. We try I mean, tonight's obviously been pretty global in look, but we've tried to really focus on every sector we could identify, and then the niches within those sectors to understand where people were facing challenges, how those challenges were affecting profitability, growth, their interest in staying in the county, for instance, so that we could begin to tailor recommendations around it. And I think this is probably a good sort of segue to how the report will be organized in the end. We're going to try to help you navigate. So if you're in the vegetable business and operate a CSA, we're actually going to have an icon coding system in there, so you can follow through the recommendations and see, all right, well, that's one that affects me as a direct marketer of vegetables, and you can kind of see how we envision all of the various recommendations forming around the needs in each individual sector. So that's something that you'll see in future iterations of what we do.
Okay. Another question, agricultural small farm direct sales can be very successful, but really hinge on the consumer's knowledge of storing, preparing, cooking, and eating these products. How does the plan specifically address these related subjects?
So we have a whole set of culinary guidance points in there, from education to the notion that something like New York Kitchen, which is up in Canandaigua, New York, would do wonderfully in Chester County, both as an agritourism venue and as an education center. And for those of you who don't know about New York Kitchen, it is a space that teaches people how to cook with local products. It actually makes money. It is booked all the time. People really want to know how to prepare food and how to prepare local food. So I think the best way to get people buying local is, as you point out, to teach them how to cook and how to eat. And that starts with hands-on experience. So you'll see that's really promoted in a number of ways throughout the recommendations.
Would there be a potential to work with the more with the public schools curriculums?
Yes, I think that, and I'm not sure what that specifically is directed at, but we deal with this in two different ways. The first is through something called Work Keys, which is a program that starts to introduce the skills required to develop an agricultural workforce in primary schools. And then it just builds and builds and builds through secondary and post-secondary education. So we're very much recommending that education about agricultural workforce opportunities and jobs and skills and STEM curriculum really be more focused on agriculture starting at the primary school level. And the same goes for eaters, right? Making better prepared people to deal with cooking and nutrition and having better consumers of local food.
Next question would be, do you think county organized and funded training programs are appropriate? I'm not sure if that's with cooking, Tony, or if it's just in general. But I think.
I will. If I could just jump in quickly, I know
Sure.
the county does provide some funding to Penn State Extension, and they have a wonderful set of programs. So we do sort of indirectly. I don't think the county is seeking to recreate
Take
the
that
wheel
up.
or anything
That's
like
what
that.
I was wondering, and I was like, I'm not sure if that's a question for us.
Yeah.
Let me just speak to it, because that's really, when New York Kitchen started, it was promoted by industry, not by the state and not by the local jurisdictions. And it was supported by both the farming community as well as the Wine Grape Foundation, the farming community writ large across all sectors, as well as a handful of retailers who wanted to improve their customers' knowledge of how to deal with raw food. So that's something that not only started because of industry support, it was sustained fully by industry support until it reached a break-even point, and now it supports other efforts. So I think there's a really good model there for having the industry engage early on to get better results.
Let's see, that was, so far, that's the last question. I just wanted to actually repeat what Jody typed in the chat. She said it's critically important to note that the Ag Council members in the task force were integral in this entire process. And farmers were involved, farmers from most of the sectors were involved. So we've, and as she said, we interviewed, had people comment on recommendations, talked to people throughout the county and across all sectors. So Jody is correct to point that out, and I appreciate that. And then she also said, and we worked with the Workforce Development Board. But Gretchen, I wanted to point out, Gretchen Peterson at Kennett Consolidated School District is developing an ag pathway, which is great. So we'll certainly make sure we know that and keep that in mind as we work forward and put more detail into the plan. So we might be in touch, Gretchen. Thank you.
Are we ready maybe for next steps?
Yeah, I think we are ready for next steps. Stephanie put some information in the from Extension, put some information in the chat, but I think we're ready for next steps. There's no more questions.
So I want to say that we really have had a terrific relationship with everybody we've worked with, and there've been a lot of farmers that stayed in touch with us over time. We slowed down drafting of the report recently to help put together a number of grant applications. We're still supporting some of those to help get some of these initiatives and collaborations off the ground, which has just been, and I think to Jody's point, it's just continued engagement from the leadership has been terrific. We're looking forward to more of that happening as the report comes out. So in the next couple of weeks, we will release a draft report. It will be widely circulated and available. What we want to do as soon as that's out is schedule, probably contemporaneous with its release, is schedule a few more face-to-face sessions, not necessarily Zoom sessions like this. We find the face-to-face work better, where we are in the community. We will make time available to have discussions, to review the document, to really kind of test and retest the ideas and refine it so that we get a good final product that everybody really endorses and wants to get behind. If not the whole thing, at least portions of it, we think will be motivating for different industries. So that is, those are the next steps. So we would encourage you to kind of look out for emails, announcements, press releases that talk about the plan, that notify you when and where it's available and when and where we're available to discuss it and to refine it. We don't consider we are the end all be all. You all are the end all be all when it comes to its implementation. So we just convey, we interpret and convey what we believe is the direction, and we're more than willing to keep that process of improvement going. And those are really the next steps. So by the end of the month, you should have something to react to, other than a 30-minute presentation of data.
I was just going to reiterate a recording of this presentation and the strategies that ACDS shared with you tonight. It will be available on our website, chescofarming.org. So keep an eye out for that by the end of next week. And as always, please feel free to contact the Ag Council too. You don't have to just hit the consultants. We're happy to take your feedback as well. Is there anything else that we need to cover that we can think of?
I just want to thank everybody that participated throughout this process and tonight, just for being part of what's been a very good process, and we're really looking forward to continuing on with you all.
Great, yeah, and we've had a wonderful experience so far too, and it's been great getting to know some new partners that we hadn't even gotten to know before this whole process. So even just through the chat tonight, and that's nice. I was
going to say we definitely need to save that chat because
it will be, yeah.
People need to get in touch with.
Furiously scribbling down email addresses.
Exactly.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I think we might adjourn 5 minutes early this evening if no one else has anything to share. You know where to find us. And thank you so much for joining us tonight, everyone.
Thank you.